Labrīt, sveicināti visi Nacionālā mākslas muzeja konferenču zālē. Netik bieži notiek šādi pasākumi, tāpēc ir tiešām patīkami šeit būt, balansējot uz robežas, ka nedaudz kutelīgi. Bet atslābināsimies. Mums ir visa diena un mums ir jāstrādā ar tēmu, kurai nav par vēlu pievērsties, teiksim tā. Šīs dienas un semināra nosaukums ir Muzeja Vides ilgtspējai, ko rīko galvenokārt Daina Auziņa, kas ir Latvijas krājuma darba grupas vadītāja, tāpat arī domnīca radošais muzejs un konsultācijā ar Sustainable Tips dibinātāju un vadītāju Elīnu Kolādu, kur diemžēl ir palikusi mājās tieši tā iemesla dēļ, ka nedrīkst atrasties šobrīd sabiedrībā. Seminārs notiks 3 daļās. Tātad pirmajā daļā mēs ieskicēsim globālo ainu. Mums būs vairākas prezentācijas gan no mūsu administrācijas pārstāvjiem, kas ir šeit klātienē, gan Zoomā pieslēgsies mūsu kolēģi no muzejiem, tepat Baltijas valstīs abās, Zviedrijā un Lielbritānijā. Dienas otrajā pusē vietējo muzeju pārstāvu ziņojumi un diskusija. Ievadot šīs dienas globālo uzstādījumu, es gribētu teikt tikai to, ka pirms gada lielajā muzeju konferencē Kyoto liela daļa tematikas bija veltīta tieši ilgtspējai. Ilgtspējai vides izpratnē muzejos un veselas sesijas tiks veltīts tieši šim tematam. Un tad nedaudz mēnešus vēlāk, jau novembrī, šeit pat Tartu lielajā muzeju organizācijas konferencē, galvenā tēma tiešām arī bija apvienoto nāciju organizācijas ilgtspējīgas attīstības mērķi, par ko mēs runājām. Tāpēc šogad šeit Rīgā, kā es saku, tiešām nav pa vēlu pievērsties šim jautājumam un sāk par to runāt. Tikai ievadam, pirms es dodu vārdu Dainai. Pirms semināra mēs esam lūguši filozofu Martim Svecem dot savu viedokli no tāda filozofa skatījuma, kādā situācijā mēs atrodamies un kur būtu jāvirzās. Un es atļaušos tomēr īsu pavisam citātu, pirms mēs sākam dienas darba kārtību. Katastrofa jau ir notikusi, bet tā izmainīs visu mūsu dzīvi visos līmeņos, bet kā tas notiks, to mēs vēl nezinām. Būs no daudz kā jāatsakās. Būs jāziedo resursi, jo pagātnē mēs no šodienas un nākotnes esam krietni aizņēmušies. Parāds būs jāsāk atdot. Centrālie dokumenti, kas nosaka vadlīnijas ilgtspējas nodrošināšanai, nav tikai abstraktas idejas un formalitāti. Pie šiem dokumentiem jāpieskaita tātad apvieno nāciju organizācijas ilgtspējīgas attīstības mērķi, Eiropas zaļais kurs un Latvija 2030. Tie dod ietvaru, kas virza cilvēku rīcību. To atvēziens, protams, ir ļoti plašs un daudz ko nelielas institūcijas un tādas kā muzeji nevarēs attiecināt uz sevi, tomēr ievirze ir skaidra, un šī ievirze ir jāpieņem kā mūsu dzīves fakts. Mēs dzīvojam antropocēnā. Šis vārds varbūt izies no modes, bet problēmas nezudīs. Vienlaikus šī virzīšana nevar notikt bez izmaiņām domāšanā. Tātad domāšanai un prakses formām ir jāmainās vienlaicīgi. Un tieši tāpēc mēs šodien vairāk runāsim vienlīdz gan par administratīvo pusi, kā mēs regulējam mūsu dzīvi, arī muzejos, vides ilgtspējas attīstības aspektā, gan par mūsu domāšanu. Cerams, ka šis seminārs būs solis ceļā uz to. Es dodu vārdu Dainai Auziņai atvērt semināru. Lūdzu.
Labrīt, vai mikrofons funkcionē, ja? Labrīt, kolēģi, šeit klātienē Latvijas Nacionālā mākslas muzeja konferenču zālē un arī attālināti pie datoru, telefonu vai planšetu ekrāniem. Mēs šodien tātad tiekamies seminārā Muzeja Vides ilgtspējai, ko, kā jau Raivis minēja, ciešā sadarbībā organizēja Latvijas muzeja krājuma speciālistu grupa un domnīcu muzeja. Mūsu mērķis, gatavojot šo pasākumu, protams, ir pozitīvas pārmaiņas pasaulē, kuru īstenošanā tad mēs ļoti vēlamies iesaistīties. Un mūsu un jūsu visu dalību un interesi ir ļoti būtiska, lai šim mērķim arī tuvotos. Ilgtspējas jēdziens dažādos kontekstos ir jau cieši nostiprinājies mūsu ikdienas leksikā un daļai ļoti iespējams pat kļuvis kaitinošs, kā daždien tas notiek ar vārdiem, kas lielā intensitātē tiek lietoti arī formāliem mērķiem. Turklāt pārpratums rada arī tas, ka angļu valodā labi zināmais latīniskās izcelsmes vārds sustainability latviski tiek tulkots gan kā ilgtspēja, gan kā ilgtspējība. Turklāt ne ikdienas, ne profesionālajā leksikā konsekventi neievērojot jēdzienisko nošķīrumu. Un es ceru, ka mēs šodien tad arī kādā brīdī varbūt pie šīs terminoloģijas mazliet atgriezīsimies. Semināra nosaukumā šis vārds ir lietots kā atsauce uz populārāko no ilgtspējīgas attīstības definīcijām, kas raksturo, ka ilgtspējīga attīstība ir sabiedrības labklājības, vides un ekonomikas integrēta un līdzsvarota attīstība, kas apmierina iedzīvotāju un pašreizējās sociālās un ekonomiskās vajadzības un nodrošina vides prasību ievērošanu un bioloģiskās daudzveidības saglabāšanu, neapdraudot nākamo paudžu iespējas. Publiskajā telpā jau vairākus gadu desmitus ar dažādu intensitāti tiek aktualizēti jautājumi, kas ir saistīti ar ekoloģiju un klimata pārmaiņām, un nu jau visnotaļ pamatoti tiek runāts par klimata krīzi un Artūrs Vecs rakstā izvērsto antropocēnu. Gan globālā sasilšana, kas nes līdzi visdažādākās dabas katastrofas un bioloģiskās daudzveidības samazināšanos, kad milzīgais atkrituma apjoma pieaugums prasa aktīvi meklēt risinājumus individuālā un politiskā līmenī. Mūsu visu līdzdalība ir būtiska, lai saprastu, kur mēs pašlaik atrodamies, kur mums vajadzētu būt un kā tur nokļūt. Šīs dienas semināra centrālais jautājums ir, ko globālās ekoloģijas labā var darīt muzeji. Kā varam par šo tēmu sarunāties ar savu auditoriju. Taču vēl pirms šīs sarunas, kā varam paši samazināt savu negatīvo ietekmi uz vidi. Muzeja ikdienas darbs, realizējot uzstādītos mērķus un uzdevumus, vienmēr ir prasījis salīdzinoši lielu resursu patēriņu, ko vides ilgtspējas kontekstā ir vēlams novērot, izvērtēt un samazināt. Anglijā, kur valsts dotētajās kultūras institūcijās jau kopš 2012. gada ir uzsākta stratēģiska ikdienas prakšu monitorēšana, ir noskaidrots, ka starp kultūras institūcijām tieši muzeji ir lielākie vides piesārņojumu veidotāji. Un tas ir saistīts ar muzeju nozars ikdienas darba specifiku. Gan infrastruktūras uzturēšanu, krājuma saglabāšanas nosacījumu ievērošanu, izstāžu organizēšanu, publisko pakalpojumu nodrošināšanu un virkni cita veida aktivitātēm. Lai gan Latvijā ekonomiskā situācija, protams, atšķiras no Lielbritānijas un mūsu finansiālie ierobežojumi daudzkārt liek radošāk un arī taupīgāk lietot resursus, vienlaikus finansējuma trūkums liedz īstenot būtiskus uz ilgtermiņa iegūmiem orientētus uzlabojumus. Turklāt vienlīdz būtiskas ir arī muzeja darbinieku zināšanas par vides ilgtspējas jautājumiem. Un tam arī šīs dienas pasākums, lai šīs zināšanas bagātinātu. Raivis jau minēja par semināru struktūru, to es vairs neatkārtošu, noslēgšu savu runu ar pateicībām. Es vēlos pateikties visiem referentiem, kur ir piekrituši šodien būt šeit. Paldies arī auditorijai, klātienē un attālināti. Latvijas Nacionālajam Mākslas muzejam par iespēju tikties šajās telpās. Īpašs paldies semināru finansiālajiem atbalstītājiem. Tas ir Valsts kultūra kapitāla fonds, īpaši kultūras mantojuma nozare un nozares kuratora Vita Vilka, Ziemeļdimensijas kultūras partnerības sekretariāts un personisks paldies sekretariātu vadītājai Dacai Reselei, kā arī Ziemeļministru padomes birojas Latvijā, un personisks paldies biroja direktoram Stefanam Eriksonam un padomniecēm Ievai Hermansonai un Maijai Kālei. Jā, un galu galā, protams, īpaši paldies šī pasākuma radošajai grupai, Ivetai Skripstei no Paulas Stradiņa Universitātes muzeja, Rūtai Šmitei no Ziedoņa muzeja, Elīnai Kolātei no Sustainable Tips, Inetai Zelčai un Raivim Sīmansoniem no Domnīcas Creative Museum un Edvardam Percevam, kas ir mūsu vizuālās identitātes autors. Es ļoti ticu un ceru, ka šīs dienas seminārs visiem dalībniekiem un dalībniecēm sniegs gan jaunas zināšanas, gan arī jaunus ierosmes atbildīgu un vidē draudzīgu prakšu īstenošanā. Un pārskatāmā nākotnē radīs arī vēlmi pievērsties ilgtspējas stratēģiju izveidei un ieviešanai pārstāvētajās institūcijās. Paldies!
Kad Daina Auziņa referē, ka muzeji tik tiešām ir viena no tām institūcijām, kuriem ir lielākā ekoloģiskā pēda, viņi zina, par ko viņi runā, jo šobrīd viņi ir šī Muzeja Nacionālā mākslas muzeja krājuma darba vadītāji, tiešām zina, ko katra mūsu uzturētā vienība izsaka CO2 izmešu ziņā. Visticamāk, tam ir arī aritmētisks aprēķins pamatā. Bet šī brīdī tad pirmajā sapulces daļā es labprāt dotu vārdu mūsu diviem administrācijas pārstāvjiem. Pirmais runās Artūrs Toms Plešs, Vides aizsardzības un reģionālās attīstības ministrijas parlamentārais sekretārs. Lūdzu to.
Labdien, cienījamie klātesošie šeit tiešsaistē. Man tiešām ir prieks būt šeit tā iemesla dēļ, ka mēs runājam par muzejiem un par to, kādā veidā muzeji var pozitīvā veidā ietekmēt klimatu, bioloģisko daudzveidību un kopumā mūsu vidi visapkārt. Līdz ar to pat, ja varbūt šķiet, ka muzeji ir neliela daļa no visas kopīgās ekosistēmas, lai mēs šo mērķi sasniegtu, es domāju, ka ir ļoti svarīgi, ka mēs katrs zinām savu lomu un savu vietu šajā kopējā ķēdē, lai šos mērķus sasniegtu. Un patiesībā šis pandēmijas, Covid pandēmijas laiks ir ļoti pateicīgs tam, lai par to runātu, jo lai gan dzīvojam šobrīd tādos pārmaiņu laikos ļoti trauksmainā pasaulē, jo šobrīd dati rāda, ka Covid pandēmija, cilvēku pārvietošanās, paradumu maiņas, dažāda veida ekonomiskie apstākļi, kāda valstīs ir samazinājuši CO2 pēdu kopēji pasaulē, un mums ir jādomā par to, kādā veidā ilgtspējīgi šīs iestrādnes saglabāt. Bet varbūt nedaudz par praktisko pieredzi šajā pusē. Kā mēs zinām, Skandināvija ļoti ilgstoši ir bijis tāds piemērs pasaules līmenī, kādā veidā ilgtspējīgi domāt par saimniekošanu, par vidi un darbībām dažādos sektoros. Pirms aptuveni 10 gadiem man bija iespēja studēt Dānijā, Kopenhāgenā, un vienā no tādiem atpūtas brīžiem es devos ekskursijā uz netālu no Kopenhāgenas esošo Luiziānas modernās mākslas muzeju. Un tajā brīdī, apmeklējot šo konkrēto muzeju, likās diezgan tāda unikāla pieredze, cik ļoti racionāli un pārdomāti ir iespējams apvienot, teiksim, dabu ar šo te praktisko mākslas pusi, ko cilvēki iet un baudīt. Un vēl jo vairāk, tas, kas man palika atmiņā, uz vietas lasot šī te muzeja direktora domas par to, kur tad ir muzeja loma šodienas sabiedrībā, man vēl joprojām atmiņā ir iespiedies tas, ka šis konkrētā muzeja mākslas direktors teica, ka muzeji nav tikai par vakardienu, kur mēs varam skatīties mākslas darbus, kur ir, sastādīti vai veidot iepriekšējā gadsimtā, varbūt gadu iepriekš. Muzeji ir iespēja, tā ir vietas, kas var mainīt sabiedrību un nodot pozitīvas ziņas tajā virzienā, kur mēs vēlamies, lai sabiedrība iet. Un šajā gadījumā, šajā momentā ir jāsaprot, kur tad mēs iesim. Un tas gala mērķis, gala pietura šobrīd, ko Latvija sev ir nospraudusi, un arī visa Eiropa, ir 2050. Gadā sasniegt klimata neutralitāti. Ko tas nozīmē? Tas nozīmē to, ka 2050. Gadā, tādiem vienkāršiem vārdiem runājot, tik daudz CO2, cik mēs gaisā emitēsim, tik daudz mums potenciāli ir jāabsorbē, lai šis nulles līmenis tiktu sasniegts un tādā ziņā mēs būtu klimata neitrāli. Bet skaidrs, ka 30 gadu garumā no šodienas skatu punktu skatoties, mums būs diezgan nopietni jādomā pie tā, kādā veidā mēs pārkārtosim mūsu ekonomikas nozares, kādā veidā mēs pārkārtosim mūsu domāšanu, lai mēs šos mērķus varētu sasniegt. Un jau tuvāk izaicinājumi mums patiesībā sagaida starposms 2030. Gadā, kad nu jau arī Eiropas ministru padomē tika apstiprināts lēmums, ka mēs emisijas 2030. gadā samazināsim par 55%, un lai arī tas skan tāds, kā abstrakts mērķis, varbūt līdz galam nesaprotams, kādā veidā mēs tur varam nonākt, tas patiesībā ietvers ļoti, ļoti daudz dažādas sfēras, kādā veidā mums būs jādomā par to, cik mēs un kādā veidā efektīvi saimniekosim. Tas ietvers sevi atkrituma apsaimniekošanas modeļa maiņu. Tas ietvers to, ka mēs kopumā savu ekonomiku veidojam uz aprites ekonomikas principiem, ka mēs kopumā ejam no tā, ka mēs domājam par atkrituma apsaimniekošanu, mēs ejam uz resursu apsaimniekošanu. Tāpēc patiesībā varbūt tas, ko arī Daina minēja par šiem izaicinājumiem, kas ir arī finansiālā ziņā šobrīd muzejiem, ka mums ir jādomā taupīgi, mums ir jādomā radoši. Tas patiesībā varbūt ir pat tāds pozitīvs katalizators savā ziņā esot šobrīd, jo tas mums ļauj radošāk paskatīties uz tiem resursiem, kas mums ir un kādā veidā mēs tos varam izmantot nākotnē. Un skaidrs, ka arī muzeji šajā jomā spēlēs ļoti nozīmīgu lomu, vai tie ir pilsētās, vai tie ir reģionos. Arī šajā gadījumā katram no šīm iestādēm būs jāpārdomā veids, kādā mēs saimniekojam līdz šim, kāda ir mūsu ekoloģiskā pēda un ko mēs varam darīt citādāk, lai savu ietekmi mazinātu. Tā kā es domāju, mums šodien priekšā sagaida ļoti interesantas diskusijas par to, kādā veidā uzlabot muzeju energoefektivitāti, par to, kādā veidā domāt par resursu apsaimniekošanu. Visticamāk arī nākotnē no šāda veida biļetēm arī nāksies muzejiem atteikties, jo tas tomēr arī ir resursu lieks patēriņš. Un galu galā tiešām es novēlu muzejiem skatīties uz kā tādiem pārmaiņu nesējiem, kas tās vēlamās un nepieciešamās pārmaiņas, kas sabiedrībā mums ir jāiedzīvina, muzeji tās var simbolizēt, nest un skaidri nokomunicēt sabiedrībai. Paldies, un es ceru uz ļoti saturīgām un jaukām diskusijām šodien.
Paldies. Es domāju, ka mēs turēsim jūs pie vārda, un pirms mēs paši tiekam skaidrībā sektora iekšienē, kādas būtu labās prakses vadlīnijas nepieciešams. Pastrādāsim, izdarīsim mājas darbu, un tad nāksim pie jums un runāsim kopā, kā mēs varam labāk risināt jautājumus jau institucionālā līmenī. Šī brīdī es dotu labprāt vārdu Uldim Zariņam, Latvijas kultūras ministrijas sekretārs vietniekam kultūra politikas jautājumos, runāt par šo pašu tēmu, bet jau mūsu resoru ietvaros. Paldies!
Jā, labrīt! Sveiciens visiem klātesošajiem, gan klātienē, gan attālināti. Daudz laika neaizņemšu, jo mans, protams, uzdevums galvenokārt ir parādīt ar savu klātbūtni, ka arī kultūras ministrijai šī joma ir svarīga un bez šaubām kā tāda tiks apskatīta lielākā vai mazākā detalizācija arī topošajās kultūra politikas pamatnostādnēs, un es ceru, ka arī muzeja stratēģijā. Un no savas iepriekšējās profesionālās pieredzes no biblioteka jomas es zinu, ka runāt par ilgtspējīgu attīstību, ilgtspējīgas attīstības mērķiem ir sasodīti grūts un nepateicīgs darbs. Tāpēc, kad ir diezgan cilvēciski saprotams, ka tajā brīdī, kad mēs sākam runāt par klimata neutralitāti visā pasaulē, tad tāda cilvēka dabīga reakcija ir, ka smadzenes bišķiņ atslēdzās un iestājās domāšana, ka ko tad es tur varu iesākt. Okay, pat tad, ja es savā personīgā līmenī vai savas institūcijas līmenī darīšu visu, ko es varu, ko tas viss līdz, ja teiksim lielās rūpnīcas, kas ražotnes turpina ražot šīs CO2 emisijas un ko tad daudz līdzēs tas, kad es nomainīšu, ja es savās mājās dušā mazgājoties izslēgšu ūdeni tajā brīdī, kad es ziepējos, vai savā muzejā nomainīšu kvēlsvelģu lampiņas pret LED lampiņām. Kad, tas ir tāds piliens jūrā viens ir, un lielajā globālajā līmenī tas neko nemainīs. Ir, manuprāt, ļoti saprotama šāda te loģiskā tāda, padošanās, jāsaka. Un grūtība ieraudzīt, kā mans konkrētais mazais pienesums dod kaut ko lielā mērķa sasniegšanai. Tā kā Es domāju, ka ir liels paldies jāsaka šī te semināra organizētājiem, kas pievērš uzmanību galvenokārt tieši praktiskajām lietām, ko mēs varam praktiski darīt, arī savas mazās iespējams un maznozīmīgās un maz ietekmīgās lietas, kas kopumā beigās tomēr sasumējās globālo mērķu sasniegšanā un izveidot cilvēku galvās, palīdzēt izveidot šo te sakabi starp mazajām praktiskajām lietām, kas ir darāmas, un lielajiem globālajiem mērķiem, un tādējādi mazinot to atsvašinātību no lielajiem skaļajiem mērķu nosaukumiem un vārdiem. Un muzeja, protams, ieguldījumu, manuprāt, var sniegt divējādi. Pirmkārt, tas ir šīs praktiskās lietas, kas ir īstenojams muzeja darbā, bet, protams, muzeja darbs primārais vienmēr ir un būs stāstu veidošana, kas jau arī tika pieminēts, kad sabiedrībai vispār ārkārtīgi svarīgi, lai viņi varētu funkcionēt, ir naratīvi un stāsti, kuriem noticēt, jo nevienmēr cilvēkiem palīdz loģiskā izpratne, reizēm palīdz arī ticība un sapratne un tā iedvesma, ko var dot arī kultūras pieredze. Un, manuprāt, tāda lielāka un ilgtspējīgāka muzeju ietekme uz sabiedrības domāšanas izmaiņām un arī globālām patēriņa un vides lietošanas izmaiņām sabiedrībā ir tieši caur stāstiem, kur muzejiem ir milzīgs potenciāls šos stāstus stāstīt. Bet ir viena problēma, ka ir ārkārtīgi grūti izstāstīt ticamu stāstu, ja tu pats tam netici. Un sabiedrība, cilvēks to, protams, jūt, un viņš jūt falšumu, viņš jūt, kad teiksim, muzeja izstāde ir izveidot, tāpēc, ka konjunktūra šobrīd tāda ir, ka ir jārunā par zaļajām lietām, tad mēs arī izdarīsim, bet cilvēks jau jūt, ka tas nav pa īstam. Tāpēc manuprāt, tiešām tas galvenais uzdevums, un kur šobrīd šis semināra cikla galvenais uzdevums būtu likt tiešām muzeja cilvēkiem līdz kaulam saprast, kas tas īsti ir, ko mēs varam darīt praktiski, likt noticēt šīm lietām, lai mēs ne tikai savā praktiskajā saimniekošanā būtu vidē draudzīgāk, bet lai arī mēs saprastu, par ko ir šis stāsts, kāpēc ir šis stāsts, un attiecīgi noticēt tam un varētu arī palīdzēt tālāk jau sabiedrībai šo stāstu nest un stāstīt un būt pārliecinoši savā stāstījumā. Tā kā ceru, ka šis ir lielisks pirmais solis, un ticu, ka jums būs fantastisks seminārs, un noteikti būšu klāt arī diskusijas sadaļā. Veiksmīgu dienu!
Paldies, Uldim! Filmētājiem jautājums, ko mēs darām tālāk? Šī brīdī mums vajadzētu sazināties ar Tartu. Mēs jau esam gaisā? Agnes, we are just breaking out from the confines of this small room at the National Art Museum in Riga, reaching out to you in Tartu. Do you hear us?
Can you hear me? Okay, hello?
Right, I will stand here because then I can see you. Oh, right, now you are on a big screen. I can communicate like that. Is it okay?
Yes.
Can I stand in profile? Very well.
Sorry?
So it's not about me. So it's all about you this time, Agnes. Hello. So at this moment, I should be introducing myself, but because we are acquainted, I should be skipping it. Anyway, if somebody is watching this online right now, my name is Raivis Sīmansons. I'm representing the Creative Museum think tank, which is one of the organizers of this event, though I should give all the credit to Daina Auziņa, who is the head of the collections group here in Latvia, who is monitoring the environmental impact of Latvian museums as well. And now, in the large introduction to the seminar, I said that last year in Tartu, we met at the NEMO conference, annual conference, which was to a large extent dedicated to the so-called SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, right? So,
yes.
And we were enjoying the splendid new building of which you are so taking proud of because it's a green building, right? So at this moment we know that perhaps you have made sort of midterm evaluation of how this building functions in terms of sustainability and your green neutrality and so on and so on. So we would very much like to hear from you honestly about what is the reality now in the 5th year in running of your brand new museum? Is it the 5th year in running? I think so. Right.
I think it's 4 years now. We are running 5th year.
The 5th year in running. Exactly. Yes. So I'm now giving floor to Agnes Aljas, who is the research secretary at the National Estonian Museum, Rahma, in Tartu, to give us more about the, as you termed it, new approaches to old strategies. Agnes, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm really happy to open the conference morning and sending you my best wishes from Tartu to Riga, mostly, I think, and in the other places, as the presenters are coming from different parts. But so I'm Agnes Aljas, I'm a research secretary in the Estonian National Museum. And if you can't hear me or I'm speaking too fast, then just please let me know. So first of all, I'm a curator and administrative person, and one of my topics that I'm dealing mostly daily is contemporary collecting. And I have been part of the museum development processes in last years. And the sustainability in a large sense has been in the center of the developments, but I can't say that the environmental sustainability has been like the top priority. And there's always topics that are more urgent to solve than maybe the environmental in the real practice in the end. Can you see my slides? I think so. So I'm trying to change them also in the same time. So it's an honor to have the invitation from organizers, and in the next 20 minutes I will try to make very practice-based overview of different traditional museum practices and to some new approaches that we have had. So the Estonian National Museum, we opened our work in a new building in 2016. For the museum, it was an old area where the museum was situating also in the 1920s and 1930s, like in this area. And but after the Second World War, the area was taken over by the Soviet military airport, and the museum was moved from here, and the airport became in the 80s one of the biggest military airports in East Europe, with all the area of 500 hectares. So nowadays the museum is situating 2 kilometers from the main city square, and Tartu is a university city, but mentally this 2 kilometers and the old airfield area was always looked as very far, even if the area was abandoned in the 1990s, which takes us to the environmental questions, of course. But when the construction decision was made, then we tried to combine our old museum and the new approaches that the building were giving to us. And the architects of the building from DGT Architects, they created a very open building with a lot of possibilities for public activities and interaction. And the building is also kind of like a conceptual art piece, and tries to keep in mind and to remember the area's history. But it also gives quite a lot of cosmopolitan flavor to our museum, which is dealing with Estonian ethnography by its historical tradition. So nowadays we are more a people's museum. Our collections and exhibitions are talking on everyday life of people who have been living in Estonia. We are a family museum where people come and they expect to spend all day here. But the construction of the museum building has started with a great environmental adjustment and liquidation of the potential environmental crisis. So from the military airport, we had a lot of different remains. Like if I'm looking at the papers, there was 50,000 cubic meters of construction waste, the same amount of soil with oil pollution, which had to be changed. There was 50,000 cubic meters of airplane fuel, which was in the underground tanks. And there was just 200 tons of different wastes, what you could find from the area. And also the Radi Lake, which is around the museum, was cleaned, and it was cleaned a lot with the volunteer divers' help. So there's few pieces of some years events that they were conducting in the area. But we all know that the most prominent of the effects the museum has on the climate are coming from the heating, electricity, movement of goods and people, which make maybe 75% of museum energy consumption. So when we started 15 years ago, the planning of the museum building, the environmental sustainability was maybe not as important as we see it nowadays in society. But the planning of the new facilities always helps to make decisions accordingly. So in some features we succeeded, in some features we didn't. Like we had the idea that the new museum should have geothermal heating, but we didn't succeed it, as the construction company said that they haven't used it in the big public buildings before. It's too risky, and it's also too expensive for the public building to make it. But luckily, Tartu City central heating, what we are using nowadays, is using mostly waste and wood remains. So still we can say that we're in a positive side. And of course, with the new premises, we have a good building at the moment with all the technologies that are much, much sustainable and much less energy consuming. One thing that Rainis also was mentioning is the conservation and the storage side. So we all know that strict conservation conditions are hard to put together with energy efficiency. So we decided to use half-passive climate systems in our collection storage. So the collection storages are in the ground floor of the building. They are isolated with the corridors, so it's not so influenced with the outside climate. And we use in our collection storages electrical tools only if it's needed, basically. And for that, we have the daily monitoring for the collection storages. And for example, like nowadays, when we have very humid period in the year, then maybe after a few weeks, we are forced to put some electricity on and to diminish the humidity percentage. But basically, most of the year, we don't use any electrical equipment in our collection storages. Of course, it's different when we have the film or photo collections, which need another temperature and a lower temperature than we have naturally in Estonia. So keeping up this building in 35,000 square meters is much, much less energy consuming than it used to be before. So when we were in 10 different small buildings, and we can say that this is something what always comes with the new premises. To give some other points from the museum work, then we have tried to have this idea of recycling in constant use in the museum. So for example, with the collection move, we made an agreement with Tartu supermarkets who provided us banana boxes. And we had tens of thousands of banana boxes which were used for the packing of the collections. And also the paper for the backing was newspaper raw material without print, of course. But in many ways, these kind of solutions we can use because we have a strong conservation department, which makes a lot of material research studies. And for example, in the slide, you can see storage equipment from our tapestry and carpets collections. So again, we make a cooperation with a fabric store and textile industry, and they are providing us the tubes for storages. And because of the conservation department who has made the test about the tubes and which kind of gases or materials they spread, we are very good and feel confident to use them in our collections, and we don't have to use other, of course, also more expensive materials. And the other thing is that for the packing, we use the simple greenhouse plastic, what you can also see in the picture. But the other thing is the communicative role that the museum has in environmental issues. So there's a lot of visitors in the museum who nowadays expect the museum to focus on the principles of sustainable development and responsible consumption. So we have in the permanent exhibition, special exhibition dealing with the environmental history and highlights the influence that humans have on nature. The decision was not to speak on environmental issues through the performance, as maybe Art Museum does, but we decided to talk through historical objects and evidences, like, for example, manure or the war, and which kind of traces do they leave to the society or to the external landscape. And these kind of exhibitions are always made together with some good partners, as we are not, as anthropologists or ethnologists working in the museum, we are not the specialists of environmental history. So the exhibition was made with the Center of Environmental History, but together with the ethnologists, it has this person's or people-centered view to the environmental topics. And of course, it deals with topics as extinction, climate change, and waste. Museum is still an institution which doesn't adapt to very contemporary topics very actively. So, for example, museum has not taken part of the Future of Fridays events, but the thing what we have been done for last year is to document what is happening in the events and what are the different viewpoints that people have about this series of events. Of course, museum is taking part of different activities like World Cleanup Days, or we are having traditional tree planting events in the museum, and we take part of the bicycle weeks, for example. So in many ways, the museum is approaching to environmental issues in giving a good example on how we could act in the society. The exhibitions, events, public program, they are meant more to raise awareness of this viability of the environmental education. So, for example, we have a plastic conservator, Karolina Korol, who's dealing with the plastic collections in our museum, because for last decade we have been collecting actively materials from the 90s. And in the other topics, she's also trying to explain the meaning of the plastic materials and the role and the importance that the plastic has had in the world when it was invented. And she tries to explain that the plastic is not a bad material, but the question is how we use it and how we make choices. Which kind of choices do we make with the plastics, for example? So when I talk about choices, then they can always be quite simple. So, for example, in the museum shop, we have done the choice that we are selling mostly products from local enterprises and designers. And we are trying to promote durable, high-quality handicrafts and thereby avoid kind of thrown away culture. So mostly the souvenirs are produced locally, and for example, you can also buy the glass bottle, which in our region, the water is good, so you don't have to buy the water in the bottle. Of course, our restaurant and cafe is using disposable plates, cups, and is not using disposable plates, cups, and straws. And in Estonia, with the e-usage, we are in a good level. So our administration is basically paper-free, or has been paper-free for years. In the exhibition context, we use a lot of adaptable structures and sustainable materials. And for the last 4 years, when we have had any public procurement processes for the builders or designers, this is also one point that is mentioned in the public procurement, that the materials should be sustainable and they should be adaptable. So, for example, we have cooperation with a prison industry department who is making from our old exhibition posters bags to give to the material the new use. Or the packing material is also used in several times if it's of course possible. Of course, the waste in the building of the exhibitions is sorted and recycled. Some materials are sometimes used in children workshops. So the pedagogical department goes and checks what is happening in the exhibition areas after the construction has finished. And of course, we have a good waste management. So nowadays, it's kind of normal for the public institutions to have a good waste management for different fields. But what about tourism influence? Luckily, we can say that our visitors in Estonian National Museum are coming mostly from local and neighboring countries. So, but this is a topic that we are not really aware, or we don't have a clear choice on what is the sustainable tourism nowadays and how in the practice space we could really deal with it. But our exhibition use a lot of digital tools. For example, in the picture, there is an e-ink system, what we use for exhibition texts, which are also in Latvian in the exhibition. And this also saves us a lot from, in case of changes, in printing the texts one more time or again. For the last communicative aspect, I wanted to raise the topic that has had the biggest attention in our museum history, I could say. So, and in environmental topics, and this is coming from the landscape around the museum building. When the building of the exhibitions and the building and the exhibitions were quite well approved by Estonian visitors, then the area of 65 hectares around the museum divided Estonian people quite to half. Because the landscape architect's solution was to save as much as possible the old airfield landscape, to keep the area also in a way, a memory field of this area where we are situating. And the other decision was to create around the Estonian National Museum the areas of biodiversity, where we don't mow the lawn. And the hay and the flowers are growing, of course, in summer. And the bees are working there and the birds have nests in summertime. But 4 years ago, not mowing the lawn was a shame. And it was a problem for many visitors from Estonia, which had a lot of media coverage. It had a lot of complaints to city government, as we had a law that the lawn can be in the city 15 centimeters. And of course, this was not something close to that. And it's quite understandable when we have a lot of generations who have been spending lots of their summertime in the yards and mowing. And now we have a modern building, which is a symbolic also in Estonian country. And it's in the middle of a meadow, and the lawn does not look perfect at all in these kind of standards. So luckily our landscape architects have also taken the museum as kind of platform to implement this idea of the biodiversity to the public, and it has really well succeeded. So for finishing my practice-based examples, all of these topics are quite important, and it's really hard to deny them or just to deal with some of the topics. So kind of the environmental topics are spreading in all the different areas in the museum. So from the research and the collecting or the collections to the regular waste management. And I think nowadays the museum is feeling the role of being the center of the tradition or continuity, but it also understands the role that we are a generator and a developer of cultural dialogue, and one of the topics is also the environmental issues. So now I have run through different topics, and I hope I can have some questions from you to go more deeply in some topics. Thank you.
Thank you, Agnes. Thank you. You covered a lot of ground, really, speaking about clearing the lands, your new eco-friendly building, your programming, your exhibitions, your activism, your simple solutions, of course, mentioning e-Estonia, which I believe is part of it, recycling. You mentioned the tourism issue, and you said that the ecosystem of both the building and the landscape is to be seen as a whole. Just perhaps first question, did you figure it out all yourself? Because it seems like a future, or there's been something of a kind of a push from above, from your administration?
As I said in the beginning, I think we never had a conscious environmental strategy in the museum. So in many ways, it has always been like a normal things what maybe nowadays people do. So for example, if we had a decision now 15 years ago with the landscape that we are going to have it as it is and just trying to have it like a nice meadow, then this kind of decision makes also museum to think on the other topics. So if we decide to have a landscape with biodiversity, then in the inside we can't really make things that would be opposite of this kind of ideas, for example. So it's kind of has all been one strange development in the years' time, but we don't have constant discussions, unfortunately, on the environmental issues in the museum. And this is something what we don't also do in the Estonian landscape too much.
Right. Well, but don't be shy. It seems like there's a lot of things are going on there. But as you say, perhaps starting one thing, it kind of develops in thinking about other areas of museum work. And then logically, I would need to ask you if you have developed your own sort of a toolkit for good practice.
We haven't yet, but now we are, I think in the beginning of the next year, there has been a group of museum professionals from different Estonian museums. And so we are trying to have this kind of minimum requirements for the museum in the environmental issues. And yes, so it's kind of like Estonian ICOM is trying to group these kind of people around the museum field to do that.
Well, perhaps then, if you think of who would be your closest partners to work with in developing a toolkit for museums, who would you think of, first of all? In Estonia, naturally, in your environment.
Yes, I think now the biggest support group has been the people who are working in Tartu in Natural History Museum or in Tallinn in Natural History Museum. And they have done a lot of exhibitions on these topics. And I think they are kind of raising the questions more and more. And but it's kind of very nuanced in the sense that if we are taking Estonian Art Museum, which energy efficiency is really bad in the context when it comes that the museum was opened in the middle of 2000s, but the construction projects were all done in the 1990s. So for them, it's really hard to say that we are a museum who is going to be very, our like print or our footprint will be low, but they can do all the other things if you leave all these collection storages topics, because this is so huge and they can't solve it in any cases, basically.
So what you suggest is that you'll be put naturally in a lead position with your brand new building and your facilities that you can, utilize in a proper way. Right, Agnes, I think I will tell from every one of us here and who is watching us a large thank you for being with us and covering all these topics. We are hugely inspired now. And actually, at this minute, Indre is joining us from Vilnius. And I believe that the next question that I would, by way of a bridging Tartu and Vilnius, ask already, Indre. Do you hear us?
Yes,
Indre?
I do hear you. Do you hear me?
Okay, so here we have another example of a fantastic new building being put into center of a town by a star architect this time, David Libeskind. And I would just wish to bridge these two cities which have brand new buildings and ask actually both of you at this moment, are you happy with these? Are you happy with the new buildings that you have? First, Agnes.
Yes.
You are happy. No. Okay, 5 years in running, you are happy with the new building. And you, Indre, is the David Libeskind living up to expectations of Lithuanians and yourself?
Of course.
He is, right. Okay. Well, I think at this minute we should then turn to Vilnius case study. Thank you, Agnes. It was nice reaching out to you. Stick around. There will be interesting discussions during the day. Right. Okay. So, hello. Bye. And now turning to Indrė Lelevičūtė. That's correct?
Yes, that's
Pardon
correct.
my pronunciation. Okay,
no worries.
So here we are. Now we have another similar, you might say a similar situation where an initiative of building a brand new facility for a museum and for public work is being accomplished. And those of us who have been to Vilnius and see the new structure have marveled at the fine finishing of interior design and of course the signature architecture, which is outstanding in the medieval Baroque landscape of the old Vilnius town just across the street. But then, Indre, first I should introduce you. You are the head of PR at this new Museum of Modern Art in Vilnius, right? And you've been supposed to talk about how to make the environmental sustainability to become a museum's DNA, okay? And then my question would naturally be, is these two things that we see, this brand new building with its facilities and our high expectations of sustainability match? Because we know David Libeskind is very famous of vast spaces, huge windows, all things that speak for high energy consumption and so on and so on. Perhaps by way of introducing your talk, I would wish to ask you how this building functions for you. And then you can turn to your presentation.
Of course, before giving my presentation, I would briefly mention that although the building is designed by the world-renowned architect Daina Lipkes, and probably a lot of people think that it is not so very energy efficient, but actually it is very compact, and all the spaces are very efficiently used. We try to optimize the utility costs as much as possible. And speaking about all of this environmental sustainability, I will mention it in my presentation, and I will also talk about how we consider, how we think, and how we imprint this environmental sustainability into the museum's DNA, which includes both the facilities, the museum itself as a building, as well as everything that we do and everything that we provide for all of our communities and for all of our visitors.
Right, Indre, I give floor to you now for a more extended work and presentation, and we talk afterwards if we have more questions here in the room. Okay, floor is yours.
Of course. So let me just share my presentation, and I think you can see it right now. So as I was introduced before, I'm Indre from MO Museum in Vilnius, Lithuania, and I'm very happy to participate here today with you, although in this new reality in the virtual form, but still very happy to be part of this important event. And here's a photo of almost all our small but very inspiring team. And we are a museum that is a personal initiative of two scientists, two philanthropists, Danguolė and Viktoras Butkus. And the museum, although opened its doors in 2018, we functioned as a museum without walls for almost a decade. And since the opening in 2018, we have become a place to spend the free time. We invite visitors to exhibitions, film screenings, educational activities, concerts, and events that are geared to different and various age groups. And our strategic directions are openness, creating additional value, and sustainability. And therefore, today, I will tell you a short story of how we work and on this challenging and very important and wide subject matter as how to imprint environmental sustainability into a museum's DNA. And to begin with, I would like to start with a quote from our colleagues and our friends. We are museums, and we also believe that museums have a great opportunity and power to drive a global conversation. And therefore, I would like to highlight our two focus points, what we have been working on recently, and what we mean and what we consider when we talk about environmental sustainability. And the first one, and one of the most important things, is inclusiveness. And when we think about that, we say that inclusion is a topic that cannot be forgotten. And I mean that it is the ability to include as many different types of people and create and nurture communities, treat all people fairly and equally. And I will go through 5 different examples from our everyday life at the museum. So first of all, building and nurturing communities. We have a modernist loyalty program that is the supporters of the museum, the ones, it is an annual membership, the ones that believe and want to support MO Museum as their own personal initiative. As the museum started from the personal initiative of 2 people, we try to include as many people as possible who want to feel and to be part of the museum themselves. Of course, we build and establish sponsors and business clubs who help us financially. We nurture those communities and try to give them as much as we can give from museum perspective. I have just recently come from the conference to teachers. We have Teachers Pass community, and today we are holding a conference on online teaching and how museums can benefit and how the content that museums create can be included in the online teaching program. And during this quarantine, we developed a very wide and diverse community, which is here in Lithuanian, #Menas Namo. That means in English, art that comes directly to your home. And when we had to close, we decided to give cultural and inspiring content directly to our visitors or the ones who seek for some inspiration. And we give a lot of content online about more collection, about our artists, about culture, about leisure, and very various different topics. One of the important aspects to mention is that we have 140 volunteers, and the community of the volunteers is renewed twice a year, and they come to MO Museum, and they are the face of our museum because they are the first to greet the visitors. They are the ones to answer their questions. They are the ones to feel the visitors welcome at the museum, and we are very happy that this community is very diverse, from school children to the seniors. We have volunteers who are the guides of our museum and who give excursions, and we are very happy, for example, to have special guided tours for seniors, and even our senior volunteer is the guide of their tour. We also try to make the experience at the museum comfortable for everyone. We do everything to help people with disabilities feel comfortable in the museum spaces. That means that all the exhibitions are available to everyone. We tailor activities to accommodate all the needs. For example, as I mentioned before, the guided tours for senior citizens. We had special guided tours that you can see in the photo for parents with their little ones, special tours for neighbors, and etc. So by making experience comfortable for all, we also have in mind all the content that is created online and that is free of charge and that can be accessible from anywhere. And it can also be considered as part of our sustainability as we go more and more online. Speaking about socially sensitive groups, and having in mind the museum ticket pricing, we have an extensive discount system for them. Also, due to the help of other visitors and our sponsors, we are able to accept socially sensitive groups free of charge. For example, every visitor of the museum that comes to MO has an opportunity to buy a ticket for himself or herself, and a ticket for the ones who cannot afford it. So this is the initiative to help people come to museum, even though they couldn't probably allow themselves that. We are in a partnership with British Council, and recently we participate in a project that gives an opportunity for our educators and our educational programs to travel through different cities in Lithuania and to go directly to socially vulnerable communities, because we are participating in the project that is based on visual thinking strategy, and we try to increase and to build stronger skills of creativity, of critical thinking, and so on. And we were very happy to be able, and we still are very happy to be able to travel and to reach more and more people in the whole Lithuania. We also care for our healthcare workers, and during the quarantine, we started the initiative in order to support the museum. Everyone who bought a ticket of MO Museum, we made a present, an additional ticket to the healthcare workers. We had almost 1,000 tickets bought, and finally we decided that the whole month of July will be the month that all the healthcare workers could come to MO Museum free of charge, having in mind this specific and really difficult situation for all of us that we live in. We decide that art is something that can heal us spiritually, and we want to welcome everyone who helps us in this difficult situation in the COVID pandemic. And we were very happy this year that in the award ceremony, people with disabilities, they decided and they awarded us as the choice of the year. And we were very happy to be mentioned, to be one of the list, and to be listed as the one that they choose. That means that all the initiatives and everything that we do is needed, and they appreciate that. And to end our inclusiveness topic and inclusiveness focus point is the events that we try to organize in order to meet the expectations of different communities. And that's why we have, for example, gardening enthusiast meetings in summer that gather in our sculpture garden outside, and they talk about various aspects of gardening. We have picnics, we have poetry readings outside in our terrace or sculpture garden. Every Sunday is dedicated to families and the little ones who come to the museum. We have special activities for them. And recently we launched a series of events that is called The Art of Being. And every month we dedicate to different topics. We talked about the art of love, the art of celebration. For example, November is dedicated to the topic, the art of creating. And we not only talk with our collection artists, we organize workshops. We also talk to different professionals about creativity as a whole. And that means that inclusion and inclusiveness of different and diverse communities is also part of our focus point and one of the aspects of sustainability. Another aspect of sustainability is our eco mindset and everything that we have in mind while creating some programs, developing new products, and giving something new to different audiences. And all the practical activities at MO that we implement we are always aware how to decrease environmental impact, and we try to highlight this important topic in our local communities. And there's a wide range of aspects that we do, so let's go through them. And to start, it all should start from the beginning, from what we believe. And as mentioned before, as MO Museum has started as a personal initiative, and our founders, Danguolė and Viktoras Butkus, had a strong vision from the very start. And sustainability was one of MO Museum's strategic directions. Having started collecting the collection, from the very first day, it was digitalized, it was available online, but not even speaking about the collection, it was crucial to have in mind sustainability when designing the museum spaces, as the museum was freshly new. It was built just 2 years ago. And so sustainability aspect was very important. And it is still very important as we form MO Museum role as an institution in the society. So this eco mindset is very important, speaking about museum spaces. And we should have in mind the size of the building, although from the outside it looks very big. Actually, this is the architectural design. Actually, it is a very compact building, and it contains all the necessary elements to accommodate a museum as an institution. And all the spaces are multifunctional. We have 2 exhibition halls, one major as the main exhibition hall and one small hall. We have a multifunctional events hall that is dedicated to film screenings and to different events. And of course, the building itself is the house of our administration. And optimization of the space and the functional flexibility contributes to the eco-friendliness of the building. And the building itself occupies just less than half of the land owned by MO Museum, and a quarter of this land is dedicated to green space. And from the photo above, you can see our sculpture garden and the sculptures in it and plants in it. And the plants for the garden have been chosen following the natural style, and they are selected specifically for their durability. So it doesn't matter which time of the year you come to our sculpture garden, it might look differently because all the plants are flourishing depending on the time of the year. And speaking about the building, we should never forget what we do in this building inside. And that means what we create and how we have an eco mindset in our heads when creating exhibitions, different events, and different activities at the museum. So speaking about the exhibition from the technical perspective, we try to reuse the octonorm stalls as much as possible, to exploit all the materials to the maximum, and to exploit all the spaces as much as possible. And talking about conceptual part, we change exhibitions twice a year. We change major exhibitions twice, and the small exhibitions 2 times per year as well. And a good example of sustainability was one of our recent major exhibitions, the Origin of Species 90s DNA, when it included a lot of artifacts, and a lot of artifacts were lent by the MO Museum community. We didn't buy anything. We didn't try to get something of our own. We just borrowed from the community, and after the exhibition, we gave all those artifacts back to the ones that they should belong to. And every exhibition is accompanied by an e-guide, and that means that it is not used just during the exhibition. The e-guide is also available when the exhibitions are over, when we make the virtual tours of the exhibition, and the e-guides might be an additional tool to explore the topic of the exhibition, even when it is already closed. And we are very excited to highlight that our exhibitions started their journeys through different cities in Lithuania, and part of those exhibitions traveled to 6 cities in Lithuania. And we are very happy that even nowadays, when it is really difficult to travel and to arrange all the events and the openings of the small exhibitions here in Lithuania, we are very happy to share what's in Vilnius, even to have a little part of those exhibitions in different cities of Lithuania. And speaking about more environment, it's obvious, but we recycle in the office as well as in the museum. We try to reuse the advertising materials, and as in the photo above, when you can see one of our educators, she is wearing a bag that is made from commercial tent that was used during the construction of the museum, and those bags are given to our educators. They are used in everyday life of the museum. They are also can be found at MO Museum shop. We try to optimize the utility costs of the museum and to save as much energy as possible. We reuse or donate the materials when the project or exhibition is over. And our ticket is a sticker, and it is not only a ticket, it is also a possibility for the museum visitors to express their opinion when leaving the museum. That means that by the entrance or by the exit of the museum, when people leave the museum, we have a special stall with a question. And for example, now we have a major exhibition, Why Is It Hard to Love? By two foreign artists, Peter Greenaway and Saskia Bodeke. And when people leave the museum, when people leave the exhibition, we have a special dedicated question to them, and they can choose from two possibilities. It is hard to love yourself, or it is hard to love others. So the MO Museum ticket, that is a sticker, also works as a possibility for them to express their opinion. And as I have already mentioned, our shop, it also has products and some specifically dedicated product line to the sustainability and to eco-line. And we ourselves produce line from the recycled materials. As you have seen before, our educator had a bag that was made from commercial tent. We also have bags, purses made and available to buy at our shop. We have a special product line that promotes eco-friendly goods, for example, metal straws, fabric bags, and etc. And we very much welcome and nurture all the partnerships with the local and eco brands, and we sell their goods at a MO Museum shop as well. And at MO Museum, we also have a reading room that has more than 3,000 books about museums, about creativity, about art, about architecture, and various different topics, music, cinema, theater, dance, and so on. And they are available to read. People can come and visit our reading room when they are at the museum. Throughout our working hours, we have special IT facilities in the reading room that enable and that give the opportunity for people to learn all the content that we have online. And we have just recently, a week ago, launched a MO Museum blog that has a lot of content available in our website, from interviews, articles, to different videos, audio collection. And we also launched a MO Museum podcast. That is another platform to give our opportunity for diverse groups to learn more about the museum. And everything is free of charge and can be available online. And more about the events that we staged at MO. They are dedicated and having in mind all the educational activities, both for children and both for adults. And we always have in mind of how to share our experience, how to build awareness, and to highlight the eco topic and different aspects of it in our events that we hold at the museum. So that means that, for example, we had events that were dedicated to the questions and to the palm oil initiative. We have a smart pop-up that is a design pop-up for the whole weekend at the museum, and that includes the designs that produce their goods in an eco-friendly way. And we try to raise the awareness that this is the way we should look forward. And these are the designers that are creating something that is good both for you and for the environment. And having done this and still being new in the museum sector here in Lithuania, as we function just almost for two years, we have learned some lessons and something to share with you. We still understand that sustainability is important, but still sometimes a new topic in our daily lives. And that is why we should never be disappointed if something doesn't work at first. It takes time and practice, but nevertheless, it is very important to not forget to think about it and to use the eco mindset at all times. And it doesn't matter what you do or what you create, just have this in mind and you will come to the better solutions. So our last message as well for you and for ourselves is dream big. And by saying that, I mean that if we dream big, we always find a solution how to do it. So, for example, what we are dreaming about here at MO Museum in Vilnius. So what about not to have a swing set that generates electricity? Or what about solar energy on the museum roof that is nice and very efficient? So we are dreaming, we are not stopping, and everything might probably be possible if we're very willing to do that. So just never forget, and this is a note to ourselves and a note to you, we are the change makers, and we can do it if we really, really want to. So that is on the environmental sustainability from our perspective, and how we see and how we develop it and how we have it always in our mind when it doesn't matter what we do or what we create.
Right, Indre, thank you so much. Well, hope is just what we need at this moment, really. And dreaming big is something we tend to forget in the time of crisis. But anyway, that's how we should be looking at the future. Anyway, we really, I believe that everyone here really appreciated your presentation. You started with this one-stop shop. Your really functional information center at the core, at the center of the atrium in a museum hall, which points to all directions and helps your people. And it was striking that you started your talk on this sustainability, focusing on people. Practically, you frame the whole discussion as sustainability discussion, focusing on your communities. And that moment when I was just about to ask, wait a minute, is the environmental sustainability taking central stage also in the museum? You talked about the eco mindset, which is a mind-blowing concept. I believe that there's so many things to learn from you. How you do your exhibitions, that you reduce the large exhibitions for twice a year, that you tour them, right? That you recycle stuff that you get rid of. And so on and so on. Perhaps one question that pops to my mind hearing about the very developed work in environmental sustainability, being just in second year in running. You are a private museum, right? How comes that that you've been taking such a prominent and central role in sustainability discussion. Well, I'm not speaking for the whole museum sector in Lithuania, just being ignorant of it, but being so prominent is something of a very conscious and strategic planning. Perhaps you can say a few words about that.
As we are a private museum, we still very much focus on the whole society, and it doesn't matter that we were the museum as a building itself and the collection is owned by our private founders, but we as the museum function as almost as a state institution. Our focus point is dedicated to all the communities. We try to include all the minorities and different groups, and we want to be not probably in the leading position, but the one to show that we care about. As the museum was opened as a sign of care from the founders of the museum, we also want to raise the awareness and to make everybody care about their environment, about their surroundings, and we want to be part of it. That's why we really focus on different communities and how to include them. And that's why even being a privately built museum, we focus on how to be sustainable and how to function well in this world of nowadays and to be part of the whole museum and leisure activity sector in the whole Vilnius. So our obstacles and our goals are probably very broad, and I wouldn't say that we should focus either it's a private museum or a state museum. It is the thing that probably we most believe in and why we are here, and we are here to make probably a change, to have an impact, to inspire, and to be a new creators of this modern world.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, it's an honorable thing to do, really, and the fact alone that you employ or attract 140, if I'm not mistaken, volunteers. That's at one time you have 140 volunteers, like queuing up for doing some work out of their free will. Is this part of the sustainability of organization that you in a way subcontract the volunteers who do their work out of their free will, or this is more of a programming of your public work?
Probably it is both, because the volunteers are very diverse, and some of them participate, for example, school children, they participate in different programs, and being a volunteer of MO Museum gives them a possibility to add to their curriculum or to be part of some program. But nevertheless, the volunteer initiative started as we decided not to have employees that are basically in the exhibition halls and are the ones that, I don't know how in other countries, but here in Lithuania, the ones that work in exhibition halls are probably the ones that always say, no, you cannot do that. Please step back. And the ones that probably visitors sometimes get scared of. And the volunteers from our side are the ones who treat people, who treat visitors with a smile. And that means that we are an open museum, and it doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter how much you know about art. You can be part of the museum. You can be part of our team that creates the museum in its everyday life. So I think it can be answered from both perspectives, but as functioning for 2 years and still having this wide range of volunteers, we are very happy. Some of them stay for longer. Some of them skip, for example, summer, but come back in autumn. And we are happy that they feel welcome, they feel needed, and they are part of our team. And to mention just a couple of examples, they become the guides of MO Museum. Even now, the head of education is a volunteer who was a volunteer during the first season. So we try to feel people welcome. It doesn't matter what position they are in the museum, because they are part of MO and they are part of our team and of our brand itself.
Right. Well, okay, Indre, I say a lot of thank you for your inspirational talk in which we learned that also the community sustainability is a big part of the discussion of the environmental sustainability, because if you keep your communities happy and if you keep your public space up and running, there's more chance that we will survive together. Okay,
of course.
Right. And well, I see that we've been reaching out to Stockholm. Do you hear us, Ilva? Or we make a pause now? We make a break? Make a break? We're making a break now. Well, then at this moment, I'm announcing that we're having a coffee break, and I thank both the Agnes and Indre for the inspirational talks we had in the morning, and we will be reaching out to Ilva Hillström in Stockholm in just about 10 or 12 minutes. We were having a short coffee break now. Okay? Thank you.